Tuesday morning here in Seoul, and I've come to Chung Hee Stream because I had a dental appointment this morning. My dentist is right next to the stream, and this building right over here, next to the Avenue of Youth, they call it, and across the stream from the Mire Asset Building or Mire Finance, whatever it's called. And I had to get the second half of a deep cleaning, and I'm good for the next few months now until my next checkup. If you are looking for a dentist in Korea, I can't recommend these guys enough. They're called Boston Dental, and they're just fantastic. They are kind, friendly, and if you're worried about the language barrier, they speak English. I mean, I don't think they've ever spoken Korean to me, and it's funny, there was an elderly gentleman this morning sitting in the waiting room with me, and he says, you know, you're quite lucky that you found a dentist in Korea that speaks English. And we started having this conversation, and he eventually asked me how long I'd been here, and I told him 30 years. And so then he switched to Korean, and we spoke a little bit more, and then he switched back to English. But yeah, it's funny. I have a lot of little incidents like that where people just assume I don't know any Korean. And other times people assume I do know Korean and start going at me, 50 miles an hour. And, despite the fact that I've been here so long, I've never actually studied Korean except for a very, very, very basic introductory class that I took when I first got here. And all the Korean I've learned since I've been here, I've just picked up by living here. And so I'm not as fluent as I should be or could be. And I'm actually trying to rectify that right now. I want to be as fluent as a native, which I should be by now at 30 years here. It's one of my most embarrassing faults. But interestingly enough, here at Chung Hee Stream this morning, I noticed that they're doing some work. You can see these things over there on the sidewalk next to the street, and then down by the stream you see these little frames they're setting up. It looks like they're getting ready for the Seoul Lantern Festival, which is happening on December 15th, I believe, starting December 15th. It usually runs, I think, a week or two. I'm not sure. Anyway, I am not here to talk about Chung Hee Stream. I'm actually on my way to a restaurant to show you one of the most delicious dishes of kimchi jjigae, kimchi stew that I know. And it's a chain restaurant. It's owned by a celebrity chef named Park Chung Hee, and it's been around, I think, since 2005 or so, and I've been going there for several years now, off and on. Actually, I haven't been there in a while. So we're going to catch line 2 here, and then we're going to transfer at Uchiro Samga station to line 3 and get off at Yaksu station and go to the restaurant.
금융으로 만나는 새로운 세상. IDK 기업은행이 여러분의 소중한 일상을 응원합니다. 안전하게 승차해주세요. 주민여러분께서는 내리는 사람이 모두 하차한다. 안전하게 승차하시기 바랍니다.
So this place, Beck's Coffee, Beck Dabang, is also a Baekjeongwon chain. I haven't been there yet. Apparently it's cheap coffee. There's a lot of cheap coffee shops like that have opened up over the last few years. This is where we're going. Okay, so that was rather fast. This is hot. So this is what I came here for. This is the Chilbun Tweji Kimchi Jjigae, 7-minute pork kimchi stew. And this is one of the things this place is famous for. And they give you this, big bowl of rice. It's huge. You get one. Now, normally, if I come here with my wife, we'll order the old bulgogi and we'll get one of these and we'll order an extra rice, and so we'll split this. Or if I come here with friends, that's how that works. Now, what's different about this from other restaurants where I typically get kimchi jjigae is that they put these huge chunks of pork in it. Now, some restaurants, many restaurants, do put pork in their kimchi stew, but it's usually, not to this degree. They don't put this amount of pork in it, so that's one different thing. But the other one that I've never seen anywhere else, and I don't know where this came from. Nobody has told me. I don't think I've ever asked, actually. But they give you this kim, the seaweed, the dried seaweed. And what you do with this, let me get my camera angled properly here. All right, so now I've seen people do this in different ways, but normally what I do is I'll just take a dollop of it and put it here, right? So I've got the kim there, and then let me find my spoon over here on the drawer at the side of the table, and my chopsticks and napkins. Come on now. All right. So you've got your kim in the rice, and you've got your kimchi stew here. And so you take the stew and you just spoon some of it right on top. And look at that. Huge, huge chunks of pork. That's just so different from other places. So you dump all that there, and then you mix it. Yeah, the pork is, thick and tender. And, other places, other restaurants, when they give you pork, it's thin, sometimes it's tough. But yeah, here, there's a lot of it, and it's thick, and it's tender, and it's good. And not only that, but the stew, the broth and the kimchi, it's all good. All together, it's a good combination. So, I think, other restaurants that serve other kinds of kimchi stew in other ways, I love those too, but this is really good. And, kimchi stew is one of those things that it's like everybody has their own recipe, right? And it's also one of those things where, there used to be a lot of hole-in-the-wall restaurants around. Just about any neighborhood you went to, you could find one or two or three or four. And these days, they're kind of all disappeared, but kimchi stew was always one of the common dishes that you could find at those hole-in-the-wall restaurants. And, I'm going to talk about those in a future vlog. I want to try to find some that are still remaining and go visit them. But yeah, you used to be able to find them in every neighborhood, and you just don't see them so much anymore. Oh, that was fantastic. I was actually quite hungry when I went in there, but even so, I wasn't able to quite finish it all. They do give you a lot of rice in those bowls, and I'm not sure, but I think maybe those bowls are intended to be shared. But every time I've been there with my wife or anybody else, friends, they always order, extra rice, one for each person. So most restaurants don't give you that much rice. They usually give you these smaller bowls. The name of the restaurant is Saemaeul 식당. And Saemaeul is, I think of it as kind of a magical word. Now, by itself, just as a word, if you're just somebody learning Korean, it doesn't have any special meaning. Maul is the Korean word for village. Now, it's also sometimes translated as community, but if you're talking about a rural village, that's a maul. Now, se means new, so Saemaeul is new village. And 식당 is restaurant. Saemaeul 식당, new village restaurant. So the reason I say it's magical goes back to when I first came to Korea. And in those days, a lot of the conversations I had with people centered around culture and history. One thing I frequently heard back then, again and again and again, was the name Park Chung Hee. The thing about Park is his legacy is very, very mixed. And when I first came to Korea, I was kind of confused because I heard conflicting things about him. So there's no doubt the guy was an authoritarian dictator. And he did abuse human rights, violate human rights and political liberty. And, he jailed his political opponents. There was torture under his administration. There was even a hearing in the US Congress about his violation of human rights in 1974, I believe it was. So there's that side of him. But there's also another side that he gets a lot of credit for, and that is Korea became a developed economy under his watch. He brought Korea out of poverty. He had this concept of rich nation, strong army, and that was a driving force behind his authoritarian rule. Through the 60s, he had these 2 5-year plans, and that started this hyper growth that Korea experienced, but it was mostly based on industrialization. By the early 1970s, it was clear that the rural economy was not keeping pace. He started this new policy called Saemaeul Undong. Now, this is an interesting name because undong means movement, right? In terms of actual physical movement. And it's also used to talk about any kind of physical exertion, really, any kind of physical activity. If you're playing sports, if you're going for a jog, if you're going hiking, that's undong. So I came here in 1991, and so that was only 12 years after Park was assassinated. So his legacy was still pretty fresh in the minds of the people I was talking to. And on the one hand, I had people condemning his authoritarian rule. And on the other hand, I had people praising his efforts to drag Korea out of poverty. And a lot of times it was the same people condemning him and praising him. And of course, you had the people who just could say nothing bad about him, who accepted that his authoritarianism was necessary to achieve the results he achieved. So, it's something you can't really define it. I mean, it seems like, you want to be able to say that it was the city people who condemned him and the rural people who supported him, or liberals condemn him and conservatives support him, or you want to look at it as a generational thing. If you grew up during that time period of poverty and you saw the transformation and you lived through the transformation, you're going to support him. If you came after, you're going to oppose him. But it's not so clear cut. It's just a really muddy thing. But it was that Saemaeul Undong movement, that new village movement, that part of his economic development that really, I think, resonated the most. The one thing that I will forever associate with Park Chung Hee's name is something I heard again and again and again and again when I first got here, and that was he replaced all the thatched roofs on the houses with tin and tile and whatever else. He got rid of the thatched roofs. I can't count how many times I heard that. Anybody I talked to who mentioned Park Chung Hee would talk about how he replaced the thatched roofs. And that was from the Saemaeul Movement. That's redundant, isn't it? Saemaeul Movement. That was from the Saemaeul Movement. And that is the reason his legacy is not all negative. It is that movement that basically garnered support for his daughter when she entered politics and became a member of the National Assembly and later president in her own right, the first female president in Korea. And it was a community-driven development movement, top-down. The government funded a lot of projects, and as far as I understand, the villages were allowed to determine what the projects were going to be. And it didn't just transform Korea's rural economy, it also transformed the national psyche, right? I mean, one guy put it to me in terms of Korea used to be can't do, and they became can do. It's where their reputation for diligence and hard work came from. Before the Saemaeul Movement, there I go doing it again. Before the Saemaeul Movement, they didn't have that reputation. And so it's a really conflicted view of an authoritarian regime, right? And that's why when you see Saemaeul Shiktang, as a foreigner, you just might see New Village Restaurant. But as a Korean, it evokes a different time. It evokes a different era when Korea was being pulled out of poverty, when they were coming together to build up their rural infrastructure. I will leave a link in the description to a paper from, I believe, the Asian Development Bank that I've recently found that goes into some detail about the Saemaeul movement. I know some tourists talk about the Saemaeul Shiktang in Hongdae. It's not the only one. There are other places, so if you do happen to be staying somewhere else, you don't have to go to Hongdae to eat it. So, and when you do go, now you know that it's not just a name. There is a meaning behind it. And for me, I need to be on my way home now. I'm going to stop at this bus stop here. I just missed a bus, but I'm going to wait for the next one, give my foot a little bit of a break, and go home and prop it up and stay there until my visit to the doctor's office tomorrow afternoon. And I want to thank you for watching and subscribing, and I will see you next time. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.